Hi all. The topic for this week is social capital. So this would be what we will discuss this week. So the topic includes funding of NPO, and particularly this week we'll focus on donation and philanthropy. And then we will continue and we will move on to discuss the topic regarding social capital. So donation part. So donation. Another way of saying so is charitable giving. It is helping activities of people through charities without the exception of compensation. So people does things uh, through charities, but they don't uh, expect the recipients to give them back about what they gave them. And in 2020, Americans donated $471 billion to charitable organization. And when it comes to South Korea, Koreans donated 8.4 trillion won to charitable organizations. And also, there is another term called philanthropy. And institutional philanthropy, it is the universe of substantial and professionally staffed private foundations. And also, there is another term called grassroots philanthropy. It is giving of time, money, and other forms of support by ordinary citizens to one another and to the collective activities of their own communities, defined either by geography, identity, or interest. The key characteristics of the donation and philanthropy is that it is helping activities for other peoples. And also, there are eight mechanisms to explain the charitable giving. Why people does such things called the charitable giving. The first is awareness of need. So when people are exposed to people in need as beneficiaries from the media, a strong positive relationship of contribution can be found. So when people saw other people who are in need, people does the charitable giving. The second is solicitation. It is the mere act of being solicited to donate. And most of the donation occurs in response to a solicitation. In 1996, in the United States, 85% of the donation acts are preceded by solicitation for a contribution. And then there is cost and benefits. There are tangible monetary consequences of making a donation. For example, cost of a donation, online or offline, that could be a matter, and benefits to donor through exclusive dinners, meetings, tax exemption might be the motivation for the donors. And altruism. People contribute money as they care about consequences of donations for beneficiaries. However, there would be crowding out effect according to this altruism, because the increase in government funding can decrease private giving to charities. And reputation, it can be another motive. So, social consequences of donation for the donor, meaning that people in social environment of donors verbally or non-verbally reward donors for giving or punish them for not giving. And people who give to charitable causes are held in high regard by their peers through recognition and approval. Psychological benefits also can be another motives. So the intangible benefits that donors bestow on themselves as a result of donating. And giving may contribute to one's self-image as altruistic, empathetic, socially responsible, agreeable, and influential person. And values. The works of a non-profit organization may make the world a better place, so it could be endorsement of a pro-social value. The last one will be efficacy. So the perception of donors that their contribution makes a difference to the cause that they are supporting can be a motives of charitable giving. So when people perceive that their contribution doesn't seem to make any difference, they may less likely to give. There is a theory about charitable giving as well. And one of the theories is called a charitable triad theory. And charitable triad theory means that charitable giving is a triadic phenomenon. And there are actors who are involved. The first is the donor, second, the beneficiary, and the third is the fundraiser. Donors, it is the entity that voluntarily contributes money to beneficiaries or to organizations that serve beneficiaries. And beneficiaries, they are entities that benefit in some way from a donor's contribution. And there is a fundraisers, and they are entities that exist to raise money from donors for beneficiaries. And charities and NPOs generally exist either substantially to raise money for and deliver benefits to some beneficiary group. And the characteristics of each of the three actors may be necessary but not sufficient to promote charitable giving. And giving is a relational because interactive relationships between the triad determined the charitable choices. And a donor may give because of their own characteristics of their beneficiaries in question, and the person asking for donation, so, and all the mechanisms uh, that can be the reason, and the interactive relationships among the three actors. And when it comes to the history of a donation in Korea, the early development of a donation that started from the 90s was the combination of attitudes of people to support those in need and tax exempt benefits. And there was a media advertisement that was popular. It was the initiation of charitable giving, and it was led by media rather than NPOs. So, media popularly focused on donation by broadcasting programs about charitable giving, and they also used ARS as a method that allowed citizens to donate in their home. The adoption of CMS, automatic payment, allowed regular donation for NPOs. And after 2010, the management and monitoring of donation became more important. The number of NPOs increased, and the corruption problems raised the importance of the transparency. And at the time, there was insufficient guidelines for fundraising and systematic monitoring systems by government. And also, exponential growth of donation had been deceased. In 2013, the donation deduction law was altered to tax credit, and extreme competitions of fundraising brought fatigue to people. And also, there were concerns about transparency of MPOs. Anyway, regardless of those problems, still, the donation is steadily increasing. And in 2020, a total donation amount was 14.4 trillion won, and the individual donation was 9.2 trillion won. And the total amount has been increasing. And 10,973 public interest entities it received 8.31 trillion won. And let's look at the legal framework of donation in Korea. There is the Fundraising Regulation Act, and it was established in 1951 to protect citizens' property right from social chaos of Korean War. And there were three debates in the 2001 alteration of the law. The first was that fundraising needs approval of the Minister of the Ministry of Interior and Safety or head of local government. And the location of fundraising should be spaces such as public, media, and financial entities. And the third one is spending on fundraising should be limited to 5% of total donation that was in the law. And MPOs requires so there was a debate, and MPOs require to change the approval requirement to legislation, and they lifted the limitation of spaces for fundraising, and increasing transparency and accounting audit would complement problem. That's their suggestion. Okay, so that was so far about the donation part, and let's look at the social capital part. Social capital. It refers to features of social organizations, and that includes networks, norms, and trust that facilitate actions and cooperation for mutual benefit. And social capital is a quality that can be a facilitator or interpersonal cooperation. And social capital is the property of collective. Capital relates to a social organization that influences individual action rather than the properties of the individuals that determine their action. And some forms of social capital are highly formal, like labor union, formally organized with a chairman or membership. And some form of social capital are highly informal, and that includes gatherings at the bar every Thursday evening. And some forms of social capital are interlaced. It's like going to a church every Sunday. And as a background, explaining the condition of a strong and responsive institutions and prosperous economy of northern Italy through government reform in 1976. And according to Putnam, the successful reform was based on civic community, the public activities from the atmosphere of cooperation, social networks, horizontal political relations, and citizen participation tradition created by citizens. So he viewed a mutual trust grounded on those activities. So, when we look at the forms of a social capital, trust creates reciprocity and networks of civic engagement. Reciprocity and associates strengthen trust. Norms of reciprocity and networks of civic engagement create social trust. And social capital includes trust, norms of reciprocity, and network of civic engagement. And there is a key term called voluntary associations. So it is the most important form of horizontal interactions and reciprocity. And the effect of a voluntary association on cooperation is as follows. So increase the potential cost to a defector in any individual transaction. It fosters a robust norms of reciprocity, and also it facilitates communication and improve the flow of information about trustworthiness of individuals, and reputation transmitted and refined, and it creates template for future collaboration. So when we apply the social capital on civil society, social capital and collective action may be the good example. So social capital, it provides a resolving mechanism for collective action problems. So private individuals competes what is best for them, and that leads to suboptimal public outcomes. And also there is a problem called collective action problem. So it's a similar. It's often it is explained with a common pool of resources. So in short, it means what is rational for individuals leads to harmful effects on the aggregates. And trust in each other, norms of reciprocity, well developed networks could lead individuals to behave in a way that also benefit the whole group. And there's also another application of social capital on civil society. And social capital and economic development that could be also related. Social capital, particularly different types of networks, are used by the poor, such as kinship systems structured to minimize risk and retain identity. At the same time, networks to cultivate to enhance economic opportunities. So people who reported the neighbors in emergency to emergent welfare call center received awards from Gyeonggi-do. So that could be one of the way that social capital influence economic development of the civil society, including the welfare side of it. So it's not like economic development, so it is like helping the poor side of economic development. I can say. And then there is a social capital and democracy and governance part as well. So from this view, social capital is an ultimate mechanism that leads to aggregates collective actions, and it is into broad-based prosperity turned on the construction and maintenance of effective local civic and political institutions that make democracy work. So it can also influence the democracy and governance part of a civil society. So when we look at the case of local government reforms in Indonesia, it was a reform designed based on social capital theory, and national government announced their full support for initiative to enhance the responsiveness of local governments, especially regarding serving poor rural communities. Research found that social capital was conceived through initiatives by civic engagement, and particularly participation of marginalized groups in village in decision making with other villagers was the important part of it. And through open meetings for fund allocation of lay people, so it was effective as well. So this one explains the examples of how social capital affect democracy and governance in the civil society. So that was so far about what we'll discuss continuously in the class. And again, it had two main sections. The first was the donation part, and the second was the social capital. So yeah, so this was it for today, and see you in the class.